As I said, jurors, before lunch, the opening statements are just a guideline, a roadmap. They're not part of the evidence. And as far as who has a burden to prove what, I'll take care of that in the charge. I'll give you instruction as to who has the burden. In general terms, right now, the government has the burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Loya, at the time, was legally sane. Now, I'm going to get much more detail when I give you the charge, but that'll wait for another day. Anything further at this time?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Please.
With Joshua Parsons, please.
Raise your right hand, please. Solemnly swear testimony to give to the court, the jury, and the issues now pending between the Commonwealth defendant of ours to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
Yes, I do.
Sir, in a nice loud voice, could you state your name and could you spell your last name?
My name is Joshua Parsons, Parsons.
And how are you employed, sir?
I'm a police officer with the Bourne Police Department,
And how long have you served with the Bourne Police Department?
roughly 5 years.
Now, drawing your attention to the date of February 5th of 2015, were you on duty on that date?
Yes, I was.
And what duty were you assigned?
I was assigned to patrol the Buzzard Space Center in Bourne.
And how were you dressed when you went for to do that shift?
I was dressed in our blue duty uniform, badge, gun belt.
And did you have a car, or were you with somebody else?
I was alone in a marked cruiser.
All right. Now, drawing your attention to at or around 2:12 in the morning, did something take place or happen?
Around 2:12, I was dispatched to Roundhouse Road for a reported car fire and a second report of gunshot victims at number 11 Roundhouse.
What did you do after receiving that call?
Drove to the scene and arrived with several other officers. And as soon as I arrived on scene, I saw a burning sedan parked perpendicular with the road, made it impassable for any vehicles or pedestrians.
Now, when you say burning vehicle, could you be any more specific?
The vehicle was fully involved. Windows were all blown out, tires were flat.
Okay, so
Burning as you could get without being totally burned out.
so it wasn't a minor fire. This was a totally engulfed car.
Fully involved, yes.
Now, you said that you were a police officer for 5 years up to today.
Yes, sir.
And would that Roundhouse Road area be part of your patrol at times, being a police officer in Bourne?
Yes, it is.
If I might approach, please, Aaron?
Please.
If you'd be kind enough to look at these two photos and just referring to what's marked as A, do you recognize what that is?
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
That is the Roundhouse Road condominium complex.
And that's taken from the airport.
Yes, it is.
In photo B, is that just a same area from a different angle?
Yes, it's from a different angle.
And would this be consistent with what the weather conditions were at that time?
Yes, very snowy.
You know how to offer this?
Offered.
Okay.
Exhibit 1.
May I publish it to the jurors? So that-
Well, you can show it to them. Well, let my clerk mark it. Jurors, anything that's marked as an exhibit, you're going to have in the jury room during your deliberations to examine to your heart's content. So if you just get a quick look at it in the courtroom, don't worry, you'll have it to look at as long as you want.
So now, when you just indicated that you came into the complex and there's a burning vehicle, could you point on the map as to where that would have been located?
You're blocking some of the jurors. There's plenty.
Fine.
Yeah, you will.
The vehicle would have been parked approximately right here across the road, right near the bed.
Okay. And if you could just show that would be in photo B.
Be right about here.
Thank you. And as these photographs show, that roundhouse complex, how many ways were there to get into it?
It's only single access, there's one road in.
And that car was blocking that access in egress?
Yes, it was.
So you drove with your cruiser to that area, and what happened?
Parked approximately about 100 feet back from the fire. There were several other vehicles there already from my department as well as fire department. Walked up near the vehicle with other officers. Immediately noticed that there was a object in the snowbank to the right near a fire hydrant. It appeared to be an IED of some sort.
What do you mean by IED?
Some sort of improvised explosive device placed in the snowbank near the hydrant. Looked like a couple of soda bottles filled with small items and then had wires on it.
Okay. If you be kind enough to look at this, George, do you recognize?
That was the,
You photographed me, that's what you saw when you were, right?
yes, it is.
Assistant marker ID, is pretty much.
Mark for identification.
That'll be identification of the,
Jurors, when something's marked for identification, that's how we keep track of it in the stenographic record. Maybe it'll become an exhibit, maybe it won't. We'll have to wait and see.
In any event, exhibit, I'm sorry, item B, here, that's a very accurate depiction of how that looked, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So I move to offer B at this point as an exhibit, even though this is the whole thing, just three other ways.
Then it remains for identification if you're not going to single it up. And frankly, if it's not in the exhibit, you turn it around so the jurors aren't viewing it. The jurors see what's an exhibit, not what's being marked for identification, until it matures, if it does, into an exhibit.
While he's looking for that, let's just move on a little bit. After making the observation of that item, what did you next do?
At that time, we still needed to enter the complex because of the shooting victims in number 11. So we had a plan to split into two-man teams and go around the vehicle and the possible explosive device through the woods using either side of the road.
So what happened next?
Myself and another officer, we had gone to the right side of the road. Because of the snow and the terrain, we had to go about 50 feet off the road into a gully, through about 3 feet of snow, and travel up the road till we passed where the burning vehicle was, to our rights at this time. Then we entered back onto the road, about 75 feet past the burning car.
Okay. And were you able to see that burning car after it was no longer burning?
I did not see it after it was no longer, it was still burning the whole time I was there.
What's the next thing that happened after you, who was with you, do you remember?
Also the servant was with me.
Okay. So you guys came out on the other side of the car?
Yes.
What's the next thing that happened?
At that point, we moved up to a fork in the road where the road can either go, it's a large circular complex, and we were going to go to the right because the other officers, we had planned to go to the left. So we got up to the fork in the road and tried to find some markers for the houses, but in this case, the markers are short markers. They were actually in the snow. So we were kind of trying to get our bearings as far as where we were in the complex.
All right. So is it fair to say at that point you didn't know which way 11 was?
No, I did not.
Okay. So what happened next?
During that brief pause, I heard a short burst of gunfire, followed by a radio transmission from Officer McDonald stating that he had been shot in the back and that he couldn't use his legs.
And do you know where Officer McDonald was?
At that time, the last I had seen him, he was in the parking lot downhill to the right, to the left on the
Okay, so when you had indicated that you had broken into two groups of two, was he in one of the groups?
He was in the second group of two. He was with Officer Leavenworth, and they had come through the woods on the left side of the road.
Okay. So what did you do?
At that time, I started to advance towards his position to try to render aid to him, and also look for the gunman that shot him. Because of the way the development's built and the way the snow was, we were walking down the center of the road under streetlights, and we didn't at this time know where the gunman was. Realizing this and that we were putting ourselves in danger, we backed up the road, myself and Officer Lacerda, and there's a large metal dumpster just off the fork in the road, and we took cover behind the dumpster until we could get a better bearing on where the gunman was.
And what happened next?
At that time, the more backup had arrived, and radio transmissions could be heard that they were coming up through the woods, following the same path that Officers McDonald and Leavenworth had taken to get to his position and help him. And that's when several officers started shouting that they had a gunman coming out of the woods towards them.
And what happened next?
I saw a deputy in K-9 come out of the wood line, or correction, out of the parking lot where Officer McDonald had been shot. As he came out, he called for support of a long gun, or a rifle, in other words. At the time, I was carrying a rifle, so I advanced down the road to provide him cover as he tried to go towards the suspect in the road as well.
Did you see somebody at some point?
As I came down the hill, I could see a gunman walking down the hill with his hands up, and I could see, I believe it was troopers on the left-hand side of the road, shouting at him to keep coming forward and keep his hands raised.
And what happened next?
As I came down to the deputy in the K-9, we moved forward, and we took over command to bring the suspect down the road and prone him out in front of us, or have him lay down on the road so we could handcuff him, or I could handcuff him. At that time, I did that.
Okay. And then what happened?
After handcuffing him, I searched him for any sort of weapons or anything that could hurt myself or other people around me. I removed a large folding knife from his right front pocket. He had tactical style, like BDU style pants on that the military would use, and there are dedicated pockets in the front that hold rifle magazines, and he had a rifle magazine on each side. I also removed 2 smoke grenades out of one of the right cargo pockets, and 2 small devices that I believe at the time were detonators out of a left side pocket, I believe.
Okay. Were you able to determine at some point whether they were or were not detonators?
I was later determined that they were not. There was some sort of internet brand rape alarm or something like that that would emit a loud sound and a flashing light when the button was pushed on it.
And what's the next thing that happened after that?
I took those devices and I put them in a snowbank near us, because at the time I didn't know what they were, and I took and dragged the suspect off the road into cover, into the parking lot, which is just to the left of where I was standing, so that we weren't in any line of fire. Because at the time we were getting multiple calls through 911 that were being relayed to us for a second gunman in the complex.
If you'd be kind enough to look into this, if I might approach you.
Council do not need to ask permission to approach. You approach at will, and if you overstay, you're welcome. I'll be sure to move you back.
Could you look at that and tell me if you recognize what that is?
That's the device, what we believe was a bomb that was placed in the snowbank.
What do you believe? It's the device you saw.
Yes, Your Honor.
I would offer this one.
Offer.
No objection.
Next number exhibit.
I don't know if we would take it out and special committee or something else, or just leave it as
For a moment, we'll identify it as an exhibit in that bag, and council, after you've had a chance to inspect all the exhibits, you may change the bags if necessary. All right, it will still have the same number. If it changes bags, it will be exhibit 2.
ammunition. I believe it's 5.56 ammunition. And this is one of the magazines that I would have taken off. Suspect.
And that's supposed to be marked as the next number A and B.
Next number A and B,
Yes.
no objection.
If you can come up with these two items, do you recognize these?
This is a handgun magazine. They took off the suspect as well as handgun caliber ammunition.
I'd offer these as 5 and
Offered.
No objection.
Next number, exhibit A and B.
You come up with this item, do you recognize what this is?
That's another rifle magazine they took off. As well as, you can see what's in the other bag.
And you just- These are, cut this open so we can, it's on.
Again, the same rifle ammunition that was in the other bag.
You know, offer this, I think it's 6 A and B.
Offered.
No objection.
Next number, exhibit A and B.
You want them to, they use the box. And do you recognize what this is?
That's a pistol caliber.
And do you recall finding that separate when you were doing your search of this employer?
I believe that was on his person somewhere when we took his clothing off at the station.
I don't know, Mr. Chairman.
Offered.
No objection.
Next number, exhibit.
And you recognize this?
Again, a belt that we took off of him at the station.
No, no, no. Now, did you do anything with Mr. Loya other than what you just described while he was still at the Roundhouse Road location?
After taking all these things off of him, myself and a trooper escorted him back down to where our vehicles were parked. Again, closer to the main road than the burning car. And at that time, I placed him in a second set of handcuffs and then placed him in the rear of my cruiser for transport.
Do you recognize what this is?
Yes, that's a Miranda rights card that we all carry.
And Did you do something specifically with that one?
While Mr. Loya was seated in the back of my vehicle with Detective Gelson, one of our other detectives, as a witness, I read him his rights and signed the card stating myself and Detective Gelson as a witness, and he acknowledged his rights and didn't say anything about it.
Okay, could you tell us what is it that you read to him?
I read, I am a law enforcement officer, and I warn you that before we ask you any questions, you must understand your rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court. You have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice before we ask you questions, and to have him with you during questioning. If you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you before questioning if you wish. If you decide to answer questions now without a lawyer present, you still have the right to stop questioning at any time until you talk to a lawyer. Do you understand what I have read to you? And having these rights in mind, do you wish to talk to me now?
And how did you respond to those last two questions?
He stated he understood his rights, and then he just didn't state anything else.
Objection.
I'm sorry.
No objection.
Next number,
What's the next thing that happened?
At that time, myself and a Falmouth officer drove Mr. Loya back to the police station in the cruiser. And
Which cruiser?
Blue's Y22.
Which is what?
A marked police cruiser.
Okay, go on.
Drove him back to the station. Once at the station, we brought him in through the Sally Port and directly back to the holding cells.
And then what happened?
We took all of his clothing off for evidence and gave him a pair of blue paper scrubs to wear and placed him in the cell.
By the way, do you see Mr. Lawyer in court here today?
Yes, I do.
Could you point him out first, please?
He's seated next to the defense attorney.
May the record reflect he's identified the defendant, Your Honor?
so noted.
And if you can kind of look at this, can you identify what that is?
This is the clothing that Mr. Loya was wearing the night of the shooting.
It's all laid out in pictures, correct?
Yes, it is.
Is that a fair and accurate depiction of those clothing items?
Yes, it was.
Do you want to offer this as a position?
No objection.
Next number,
I'd like to pass this on the jury for continued questioning. I might. Thank you.
jurors, when something stands out amongst you, you just take a quick look, pass it along, the testimony continues.
You may have said this, but he was given something to put on, right?
Yes, he was.
Okay. And what was it that he was given to put on?
It's like a blue paper scrub.
When you say scrub, that'd be like,
A disposable shirt and pants.
you were recommending these,
Those are the boots we took off Mr. Loya.
No objection.
Next number is
earlier that he was wearing the tactical style pants.
Thanks. I don't understand.
Offered.
No objection.
Number exhibit.
You recognize what this is?
Excuse me. That's a padded undershirt that he was wearing.
No objection.
Next number exhibit 13.
And just to go back for a second, had you asked Mr. Loya any questions while you were at the scene about whether he was with somebody else?
I asked him, excuse me, I asked him whether or not he'd acted alone, because again, at the same time, we're getting multiple calls of a second gunman and radio transmissions to look for a second gunman. And he stated that he was acting alone and that all the other bombs that were placed above the complex were supposedly hoaxes. He also stated that he had dropped a backpack or a duffel bag full of smoke grenades and other alarms during his travel through the complex. And I put that out over the radio so that other officers could approach it with safety.
That was at the scene.
That was while I was searching him at the scene, yes.
I'd ask you to come and repeat this question. You recognize what this is?
Is the outer jacket that he was wearing.
I don't know.
No objection.
Next number exhibit 14.
He'd be kind of able to get some time to recognize what that is.
That's the thermal underwear. I believe it's the pants that Mr. Loya was wearing.
I don't think so.
Offered.
No objection.
Next number exhibit 15.
He could be kind of able to get this to identify that.
Excuse me. This was a band he was wearing around his midsection. It's like a thermal band.
I'm not really sure.
No objection.
Next number exhibit 16.
If you'd be kind enough just to see if you could identify what those are.
The underwear that Mr. Loya was wearing.
Right off the chart.
No objection.
Next number exhibit.
If you'd be kind enough to look at this and see if you could identify what this is.
It's a padded protective shirt that he was wearing. Actually, sorry, that's padded groin protection and upper leg protection.
number exhibit.
The TV camera, look at this item.
Pair of thermal socks that Mr. Loya was wearing.
No objection.
Number exhibit.
Could you identify what this is?
Excuse me, different pair of thermal socks that he was wearing.
No objection.
Number exhibit.
21.
Could you tell us what this is?
So, excuse me, set of tactical style gloves
That came from-
that was on Mr. Loya's person, yes.
No objection.
Next number exhibit.
22.
You could identify this for us, please?
And the second set of gloves he had underneath the tactical style gloves.
No objection.
Next number exhibit.
You could identify these for us, please?
Some chemical hand warmers he had placed around his person, throughout his clothing and his pants.
No objection.
Next number exhibit.
And you would identify this item?
So, watch that he was wearing on his wrist.
No objection.
Next number exhibit.
And could you identify these for us, please?
These were knee pads that he was wearing underneath his pants.
No objection.
Next number exhibit. Please.
And, sir, that night, what was the temperature?
It was well below freezing. It was around 10 degrees.
So after Mr. Loya was brought back to the station and these items were recovered from him, what's the next thing that you were involved in, if anything, with this case?
After placing him in the cell, other detectives had come back to the station at the time, and Mr. Loya was asked if he would like to do a recorded interview, and I was in the room for that as well.
Okay. And if I might just ask you to look at this, can you tell me what this is?
This is a Bourne Police Department form for rights in recording. It advises, again, the Miranda rights. Ask the...
Okay, so that's a Miranda rights form?
Yes, it is.
And was something done with that with respect to Mr. Loya in your presence?
I signed it as twice for both Miranda statements being read and that he consented to being recorded.
Okay, so that was done in your presence?
It wasn't done in my presence, yes.
So tell us what was read to him, what, if anything, did he do or say?
You want to read from the sheet? Or?
Yes.
At this time, I'm going to tape record you being advised of your rights. After you have been advised of your rights, it will be your decision whether the interview will be recorded. I'm going to ask you to initial and sign this form after you read your rights. Miranda advisements. Before asking you any questions, it is my duty to advise of your rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice before we ask you any questions, and you may have a lawyer with you during questioning. If you cannot afford a lawyer and want one, a lawyer will be provided at no cost before any questioning. If you decide to answer questions, you will still have the right to stop questioning any time. Do you understand each of these rights as I have read to you, and it has a box marked yes and a box marked no? The box marked yes is checked, as well as initials for Mr. Loya next to it. And having these rights in mind, if you wish to speak to me now, there's also, again, a box yes and no. At that time, there's nothing checked off. Second part of the form, tape recording. There's a policy of this department to record all interviews so that there is a recording of our discussion. There are potential benefits to the electronic recording of any interviews. For example, the electronic recording of this interview will create a complete record of what is said to you today and what you said in return. At your request, we will conduct this interview without any further recording of your statements. Be advised you may change your decision at any time during this interview. Do we have permission to tape record our discussion? There's a box marked check. There's a box marked yes, which is checked. I agree to have this discussion recorded, as well as Mr. Loya's initials next to it, his signature below it, my signature as a witness, the date and the time.
Okay, and again, you observed him to sign that form, is that
Yes, I
correct?
did.
Now, who read that to him during that?
I don't recall who read it to him.
Who else was in the room when that was done?
Myself, Detective Doble, I believe Officer Spillane was there as well.
I offer this, Your Honor.
No objection.
Next number two.
And then there was an interview of Mr. Loya?
Yes, there was.
And basically, who conducted the interview at that time?
At that time, it was mostly Detective Doble. I believe at some point in time, Detective Gelson may have arrived as well.
Okay. Were you present when anybody from the state police arrived?
Yes, I was.
And who was that?
Trooper Jerry Donovan.
All right. And did he actually actively conduct some of that interview?
Yes, he did.
All right. Your role was more of just observing after witnessing the signing of the rights form, right?
Yes, it was.
That's all I have this one.
Cross-examination, please.
Officer, you had heard a brother officer that the Jerry McDonald had been hit. And then you went further down the road because of the snow, impeded your progress from cutting through the cul-de-sac. Is that fair?
Yes.
You continued up the hill until you started to descend the hill when you first saw somebody that being Mr. Loya. Is that fair?
To the right, to the left of the board?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
And your words were, sir, you indicated somebody was coming out, a gunman. Remember using those words?
Yes, I
When
did.
you first left? You didn't have any weapons on at that time, right?
At that time, no.
You approached, in fact, and you and other officers gave him some instructions, true?
Yes, we did.
And in terms of those instructions, get on your knees first, right?
Yes.
Get on your stomach, right?
Yes.
And it was coming out over to you again from, we have K-9 Officer Martin and another fellow as well. They're now closing in on Mr. Loya. Fair?
Yes.
And at that time, sir, fully and wholly compliant with any and all of your requests, true?
Yes, he was.
And then you proceed to then drag him off the roadway again, concerned for your safety and that of other police officers, true?
Yes.
And again, fully compliant with any and all of your requests, true?
Yes, he was.
And was he also responding to you at that time? I mean, yes, sir, no, sir, do you remember that?
He was responsive to questions, yes.
Okay, not only responding to questions, he was doing so in my manner, no, sir, yes, sir. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And in fact, not only was he cooperative, he was always, my words again, compliant with your requests, right?
Yes, he was.
In fact, you asked him about, for your and other officers' safety, about a second gunman, right?
Yes, I did.
And in those slew of questions, sir, there was no Miranda rights at that time, right?
At that time, no.
Yet he responded, there's no second gunman, fair?
Yes.
You were asked about what you determined the M&M bottle that may have been some type of explosive device, that they were just hoaxes, right?
He stated that, yes.
And when he was stating that to you, he did so in a monotone voice, didn't he?
He wasn't excited, if that's what you mean, no.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you that. What was his demeanor?
I'd say overly calm.
Okay. Because obviously your adrenaline, a brother officer just hit, other officers converging, you found out there's bombs, another gunman. You're excited, your anxiety's up. Is that it? Is that fair?
That's accurate, yes.
But he again was, your words please, overly calm?
Yes, overly calm.
Okay. Now, I think it was Detective, if I said it right, Silvestro, who indicated double cuff him. It was Silvestro, Officer Silvestro,
Lieutenant, yes.
Lieutenant, asked you to put another set of handcuffs on the fellow, right, and take him down to the station with a fellow from Falmouth,
Yes.
right? Who was that, Falmouth officer?
I believe it was Officer Hazelton.
Okay. And you bring him back to the Bourne Police Department at that time, right?
Yes.
Now, did you have a conversation with him on the way?
No.
No, how you doing, how the Red Sox, nothing?
Nothing else.
Okay. And who receives you, in other words, who was back at your station when you bring him in?
When we first arrived, it was, I believe it was just a dispatcher that was in the station. That was the only person there at that time.
Okay, no other supervisor, Wallace
No
Perry?
supervisors there, no.
Very good. Now, who instructed you, or did you do it on your own, sir, to remove the clothing?
I don't recall who instructed to remove the clothing.
Okay. It was Officer Spillane there.
He was there, yes. He
Okay.
arrived as we bring him in.
And did you ask him to take his clothing off at that time?
Mr. Loya?
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Okay, and he just removed his clothing as you and I would at the end of the day?
We didn't let him just take everything off at that point. We helped him take it off,
Well, when
yes.
you say helped him take it off, you held him against the wall and cut it off, right?
I don't remember using a knife to cut anything off him, no.
How did the clothes come off?
We took his pants off and took his,
Okay, nothing was ever cut or ripped off? Is
I
that what you're
don't
saying?
believe so, no.
Okay. You indicated then at some point after he's given those, what I'll refer to as those hospital scrubs, the blue clothing, you remember him putting those on, you indicated he was asked to do a report. Those are your words, right?
He was asked for an interview?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that's what you took him in for an interrogation, right?
Well, I didn't personally take him in. He was asked in my presence if he wanted to do a recorded interview.
And what was his response?
Yes.
And how was his demeanor at that time?
Calm.
Overly calm again?
For that situation there, just regular calm. We're not in the same situation anymore.
Okay. But he's using the same tone of voice as you and I right now.
Yes, he is.
And he indicates, sure, let's go back and talk, right?
Yes.
And back there is Officer Spillane on one side, and you're on the other, true?
Yes.
And the senior officer is Detective Doble, he's in the middle, right?
Yes, he was.
And Mr. Lawyer, by the way, we have a video of this. We have a video of
Yes.
this, right? And Mr. Lawyer is sitting there answering any and all questions, right?
Everything we asked.
And everything you asked. He was offering stuff, wasn't he?
He was compliant.
Well, overly compliant. He told you the whole story, right?
Yes, he did.
And not only to the senior officer, Doble, but on occasion, Officer Spillane would ask him questions, and he continued to speak, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And how long was it until the Trooper Donovan arrived?
I'm not sure the exact time.
What time did you get back to the station, if you recall?
To be honest, I don't recall the exact times of being back to the station.
Well, you spent better than an hour with the fellow before Trooper Donovan arrived, right?
It may have been the case, like I said, I don't have the exact times.
Well, you got,
The video would show the
and you
times.
got the whole story from him about what happened, what he planned and all of that, true?
Yes,
And that emotion stayed with him the entire time. Is that fair?
being calm, yeah.
Yeah. And there was no emotion. It was flat. He was flat the whole time, wasn't he? Is that fair?
Aside from being calm, I really couldn't speak to the.
Okay. And now, you stayed in there when Trooper Donovan arrived, right? The representative from the state police, or what we call the CPAC unit, true?
Yes, I was there.
And Officer Donovan, pursuant to his training experience, started anew, didn't he?
I believe so, yes.
Well, when you say you believe so, you were sitting right there, weren't you?
It's been 2.5 years. I don't exactly remember his exact conversation with him, no.
Okay, but is it fair to say he started the whole story over again about what happened that evening and the preparation for it, sir?
You'd have to ask Mr. Donovan.
Okay, you don't remember?
I don't remember exactly
Okay.
when the story started again, no.
And sir, how long have you been a police officer?
5 years.
And pursuant to your training experience and doing interviews and speaking with folks, whether it's a roadside search and so on, did you have the opportunity to view him and see if he had a note of alcohol on him or any other substance?
He didn't know.
Okay, so you have the opinion as to the state of his sobriety?
He was sober.
Nothing further, huh?
Anything further of this witness?
So, when you were asked about when you first saw Mr. Lawyer coming towards you, you didn't know if he had a gun then, did you?
I was not the first person to see him, no.
And when you asked him any questions during the entire time he was in your presence, he would respond appropriately, wouldn't he?
Yes.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Nothing.
Thank you, sir. You may step aside.
Thank you, Ron.
Joe?
All right, the next witness is Jameson Cormier. You need the telephone for Jameson Cormier's facility.
the Commonwealth Defense of Bar, speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
Inquire.
Please.
Thank you, sir. In a loud, clear voice, can you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
My first name is Jameson, last name is Cormay. C is in Charlie, O is in Oscar, R is in Romeo, M is in Mike, A is in Alpha, Y is in Yankee.
And Mr. Cormay, where do you live?
I'm a resident in Roundhouse Road in Bourne, Mass.
And Roundhouse Road, what kind of residential area is that?
That's a condo association.
How long have you lived there?
I have lived there for 5 years.
I want to turn your attention to the night of February 4th into the early morning hours of February 5th of 2015. Do you remember that night, sir?
I do, very clearly.
The night of February 4th, what did you do that night?
So I was working a night shift. I had arrived late to my residence. I had been sitting on my couch that night with the sliders and curtains open to my back deck with my lights on inside. I had the slider.
And let me just stop you there for a second. You said you were working the night shift. What kind of work do you do?
I work as a front office manager over at a hotel in North Falmouth.
And what time did you get home that night from work?
I was home at about approximately 1:30 in the morning.
Were you alone that night?
I was.
Any pets or anything like that in the house?
I did have my dog with me, yes.
All right. What did you do that night when you got home from work?
So I was watching TV. I had let my dog out back, so I did have the curtains open to my sliders. The curtains do go out to my back deck. There's a wooded portion, and then it goes down to the main entrance of Roundhouse Road Condo Association.
And turning your attention to a little bit after 2 o'clock in the morning, say about 2:07 or thereabouts, did anything out of the ordinary happen that caught your attention?
Yes, so I was sitting on my couch watching television with the sliders open. I did hear a small explosion. At the time, I believed to be a firework. And after that, I heard a little bit louder of an explosion, which turned my attention outside. I could see from across the road red reflecting glare on one of the trees in the woods across, which brought me out to my back deck, where I did see flames coming up over my neighbor's fence that is approximately 6 feet high. Whereas I stepped onto a chair outside of my back deck to look over the fence, which I could see a car fully engulfed in flames.
And the car, let me stop you there again. The car that you saw, where was the car in the complex?
So the car was parked perpendicular with the road, down where there's just one entrance going in and out of the association. So that was down behind my house. So it was parked perpendicular, completely engulfed in flames. And that's when I ran through the woods down onto the road to get closer to the vehicle to see if there was any occupants in the car.
Okay. How close to the vehicle could you get?
I could only get I approached about 15 feet when there was another explosion, which caused me to back away from the vehicle. It was fully engulfed, so I could see through the vehicle. Did not appear that there was any occupants in the vehicle at that time. I did not hear any noises, so I gradually had to descend back up to the road before calling 911.
Okay, when you say you didn't hear any noises, what kind of noises do you mean?
So there was explosions going off inside the car, which did resemble fireworks.
What they resemble? No, you can describe them. If there's some descriptive words that will enable the jurors to understand what he heard that are of common knowledge, he can use those words. What'd you hear?
So as prior, when I had gotten down to get closer to the vehicle, there was a small explosion inside of the car, which I had believed to be fireworks, which caused me to back away from the vehicle before dialing 911.
Where were you when you dialed 911?
I was in the road, Roundhouse Road, watching the vehicle. And so I had called 911, reported that there was a car fully engulfed in flames. At that time, I did not believe that there was any occupants in the car, as I could not see anybody, and I did not hear any noises, so I kept my distance away from the explosions in the vehicle.
When you got off the phone with 911, then what did you do?
I did begin to record some videos, And I had 3 videos in total. I had stopped recording after a few of them. And so because of the explosions going on inside of the vehicle, I had to gradually descend back up the road to keep my distance from the vehicle.
What did you use to make that recording?
I used my telephone, my cellular telephone.
Okay, and did you record video and audio?
I did, yes, correct.
All right. Now, sir, I'm going to show you a couple of items.
Well, before we show them, are we talking about exhibits here?
Yes.
Have they been offered and proved to the defense attorney?
I believe the defense attorney has no objection to it.
That's fair.
All right, then they're marked first. Nothing gets shown to jurors unless it's an exhibit. If it's an exhibit, juries, you have it in the jury room during deliberations. We will furnish a clean laptop or whatever's necessary to enable you to see it.
Okay, sir, from where you're standing, can you see those 3 icons that are displayed on the screen?
Yes, sir.
Did you have an opportunity to look at those earlier today?
I did, yes.
What are those 3 icons representative of?
Those are the videos that I had taken during that night.
All right, and starting with the first one. Play that.
Oh shit. That Roundhouse Road right now, fucking cars exploding. I don't know what the deal is.
Whose voice is that?
That would be mine, sir.
Holy shit. Right in my backyard. That is no fucking joke. Here come the cops right now. Holy fucking shit.
Does that first video fairly and accurately depict what you saw that night?
100%, sir.
Second video.
I'm right in my neighborhood, right in my house right now. I hope to God there's nobody in that fucking vehicle. Holy shit. There's still fireworks going on. I don't know what the fuck. This thing's about to fucking blow. Oh my God. That thing's gonna blow. Oh my God. What the fuck, dude? Oh my fucking God. This is insane. Holy shit. That's fucking crazy.
Does that second video fairly and accurately depict what you saw?
100%.
Is that your voice on the video?
Yes, it is.
The car is completely incinerated. There's fireworks going on or something must have exploded in the back. The whole thing is eliminated.
Does that last video fairly and accurately depict what you saw?
Yes, it is.
Also your voice on the video?
It is.
Where were you standing when you took those videos?
So I was, there's one way into the complex, and then it turns into a circle. So at that point, I was in the joint where it turns into two separate roads that caused the circle, and my back was, I was facing the vehicle, and my back was turned to where it splits.
Sir, I'm showing you an item previously marked as Exhibit 1. If you look at photograph A on the top, do you recognize the text?
Absolutely.
What's that?
That would be an overhead shot of my neighborhood, Roundhouse Road.
And B, the bottom photo?
That would also be a different angle from the neighborhood.
And can you point out approximately where your condo is, or the block where you live?
Yes, so I'm going to be in these units. So when coming up the road, it's the first set of units on the left-hand side.
And that's on photograph A?
That is correct.
And where is that on B?
So it's going to be down here on B.
And again, on A and B, can you point out where the car was when you saw it?
Yes, so my unit is here. They were directly below, so he was parking perpendicular to the road, right before these trees.
And on B?
So it's going to be right in these trees here.
And where were you standing approximately when you took those videos?
When I had started, it was probably at the top of this tree, and gradually I had descended back to where these roads split.
And where is that?
So I started here at the vehicle and then descended backwards towards the split. And that's where I ended the videos.
Did anything else out of the ordinary happen when you stopped recording?
Almost immediately after I had stopped recording the video, I could hear a gunshot from the back left. So my back was to the split, so it was over to the units that go from unit 10 to 15. There was
and let me stop you there. You hear that. How do you identify it as a gunshot? Do you have any familiarity with?
I have been around guns before, so I can decipher the resonation of a gun over a firework or similar explosion.
What did you hear after that, what you described as a gunshot?
So from after the gunshot, there was a slight delay. I then began to hear a scream of a female. There was 2 to 3 more gunshots, followed by a slight pause. There was 3 or 4 more gunshots with a lot of screaming. At that point, after the other 3 or 4 gunshots, that's when I had, there was a pause and I ran back towards my residence.
What did you do when you got to the residence?
So when I got to my residence, I ran around the front of my building where it was locked because I had gone out my back slider. So I had to go around to my back slider. I went in, closed the door, shut all the blinds, turned off all the lights, took my dog upstairs into my bedroom, which also faces over the initial entrance of Roundhouse Road. That's when I placed my second call to 911 to report the gunshots and the screams, and also that I believe that there were...
You made a phone call and reported. What happened next?
So when I was on the phone...
What you said. What did you do next?
After you made the phone call.
So after I made the phone call, I let them know of what I had heard.
You told them what you heard.
So I opened the window to my bedroom to listen further of the scenario, and I had watched out my back window.
Okay. Did you see or hear anything at that point?
At that point, I had heard throughout the neighborhood loud, heavy metal music coming from the same direction that I had heard the gunshots. That played for between 45 seconds to a minute before it had turned over to symphony music, again, resonating throughout the whole neighborhood.
After the music stopped, did you see or hear anything else?
At that point, I had seen a little while later flashlights of police that were coming up through the woods towards my residence. And at that point, I had gone to the front. I had seen an officer coming up to the front of my building, and I am not sure if they had gotten any of the calls.
Not what was in your mind, but
Okay.
what did you do?
So I approached the front window of my residence, opened the window to tell the officer who had come by the front of my building that I need to speak with him.
Okay,
At that point,
let me stop you there. Did you speak with him?
I did, so
Okay, and after you spoke with him, where did you go after that?
so he motioned me downstairs to the front of my building. I opened the front door. I told him that I had called 911, and I knew where the location of the shots had taken place. I directed him into the direction of Unit 11. At that point, he had told me to go back upstairs into my bedroom. If I had seen anything further, to dial 911 immediately.
Did you go back up to your bedroom at
At
that point?
that point, I had closed my door. I had gone right back upstairs into my bedroom.
All right. And the officers that you saw coming past your complex, what direction were they coming from and what direction were they going?
So they were coming from Roundhouse Road, from Clay Pond Road. They were coming up Roundhouse Road, around the vehicle that was incinerated, and they were surrounding the necessary area. They had come up behind my residence when I heard the beginning of canine dogs barking. At that point, I had heard about what I counted as...
I object.
Heard what he counts the number of sounds. He can tell us what sounds he counted.
So at that point, I had heard around 14 gunshots,
And
rapid fire.
Okay. And what direction did you hear those gunshots coming from?
Those gunshots, it sounded like it was coming from the front of my building. So it was not directly behind the building overlooking Roundhouse. It sounded like it was coming from the front of my unit as I was at the back of the unit.
And after those sounds, did you see or hear anything else?
After the sounds, I did hear the voices of some police officers, telling them, I heard that you do not want to do this. And it did sound, after that, that they have been telling somebody to get onto the ground.
Not what it sounded like.
You
heard.
I had heard that the officers were telling somebody to get onto the ground. There was a lot of quiet after that.
No further questions.
Cross-examination if you wish.
So you made a statement.
That is correct. That is, yes.
So your answer is yes.
Yes.
When did you prepare it?
I prepared it the day of the event on February 5th.
Okay. And did you have the opportunity to read it before you came in today?
I did, yes.
That was a yes.
Yes.
Right. And you indicated you heard some canine dogs barking, right?
Correct.
You heard some officers say something to the effect of put your hands up.
Correct.
You couldn't see anything going on, now you're hearing this, right?
Correct.
And in your words, followed by a barrage, your words of gunfire, right?
Correct.
Is that what you just referred to, Mr. Donovan, as 14 rapid fire? Is that your barrage?
Correct.
Okay. So again, you hear the dogs. The barrage, we now know is 14 rapid gunfire, right?
Correct.
Upon the cease, upon the 14th stopping, you hear put your hands up, right?
Not immediately after.
A barrage of gunfire, once the gunfire ceased, just to yourself, please don't, you've read it today, but just to yourself, once, just raise your hand when you're done.
Correct.
Right? And this is what you did that day. It's fair to assume your memory's a lot better that very day than it is 30 months later, right?
Correct.
Right? And again, sir, having read that, does it refresh your recollection?
Correct.
It does. Okay, and you indicated in the statement wrote 30 months ago, after the barrage, we told us to stay 14 rapid fire. The next thing once the gunfire ceased, I heard people yelling, put your hands up. Right?
Correct.
Okay, so again, the rapid fire ceases, put your hands up. That's what you remember that night, right?
It was not directly after. There was some.
Okay, well, you want to correct it in the statement that you did 30 months ago, that would be like, this is wrong.
That is not incorrect, no.
Okay, so you stand by that. Put your hands up after the gunfire, quote, had ceased. You said seized and stopped, right?
Correct.
Nothing further, Judge.
Anything further of this gentleman?
No.
Thank you, sir. You may step aside. Thank you.
Officer Qualls, please. Qualls.
Sir, raise your right hand, please. So I swear to testify to give to the court, the jury, the issues now pending between the Commonwealth defendant and the bar, speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Sir, in a nice loud voice, could you state your name and could you spell your last name?
William P. Qualls, Q-U-A-L-L-S, Sergeant with the State Police.
And how long have you been with the state police?
Approximately 24 and a half years.
And what is your current assignment within the state police?
I am the commander of the State Police Bomb Squad.
And what duties does that entail?
24/7 coverage throughout the Commonwealth for any incidents regarding explosives, explosive-related hazards, military ordnance, booby traps, hoax devices, or destructive devices.
And how long have you been with the bomb squad?
I've been with the Bomb Squad for over 19 years.
Now, drawing your attention, sir, to the date of Thursday, February 5th of 2015, do you recall coming down to the Cape?
Yes, sir.
And do you remember why?
Yes, sir. I received a call at approximately 2:40 in the morning from one of my sergeants at the time to advise me that Bourne PD and Bourne Fire were requesting our services, the State Police Bomb Squad, for what they believed to be a device that was located at a scene.
And did you get the address of that scene?
I did, sir.
And what did you do?
So at that point in time, I responded to Bourne to the address given, and while I was en route, I contacted State Police Middleborough, which is the headquarters for that particular area, to gain further information so that when I arrived on scene, I had the full situational awareness. While en route, I was advised that there was potentially an active shooter situation, and not just one device, but potentially secondary or tertiary, second or third devices. So as I was responding, I was getting a mental image of what I was going to encounter when I arrived on scene.
And where were you coming from?
Plymouth.
What happened when you arrived?
So I arrived at 3:30 in the morning. I arrived on scene, and at that point in time, I observed a large amount of police presence, police activity, ambulances, and also I observed a charred vehicle sort of blocking the road. And that's where I parked.
So when you observed the vehicle, again, could you describe the condition of that vehicle?
Yes, sir. So I observed a vehicle, a sedan, if you will, that was smoking, charred, blocking the path of this road in a horizontal fashion, with really no way to go around that.
If you can kind of look at this photo board, and can you identify what's depicted on the pictures on the board?
Yes, sir. That is a vehicle in question, blocking the road in question that I arrived on.
And are these very accurate depictions of how that item looked when you saw that?
Yes, sir.
And I offer this as an example.
No.
Next number is
Just a second, just to show you. And you got that you said about 3:30,
Yes, sir.
and you indicated that there was still smoke coming from?
Yes, sir.
And I think you've already said this, but could you please describe for the jurors how that car was located on the roadway that it was on?
Yes, sir. So if you picture a road running, say, north and south, the vehicle was placed east and west. So as a blocking pattern, if you will, potentially prevent other vehicles from going around.
What's the next thing that you did, sir?
Exited my cruiser and approached the group of officers that I believe to be the incident command post, that situation or scene, and I was advised by a senior ranking Bourne police officer who I don't have a name, at that point in time advised me that there were potentially devices.
Hold on.
How he advised you? What he did?
Okay, so just listen to me for a second. Just yes or no. Did you have conversation with that individual from Bourne?
Yes, sir.
As a result of that conversation, did you then do something?
Yes, sir.
What did you do?
So at that point in time, I called for my second bomb technician who was responding to give me assistance based upon the information that I was given, and then started to formulate a plan as to how I was going to approach these potential devices.
What's the next thing that happened?
Next thing that happened was the chief of police from Bourne PD approached me and advised me that he would lead me through the scene of the items that were identified as potentially harmful and threatening.
And what's the next thing that took place?
At that point in time, I went back to my cruiser. I secured a large amount of glow sticks, red and green, to indicate hazards or non-hazards of these items as I did my threat assessment. I was still waiting for my second bomb technician to show up, but I had to take immediate action based upon the large amount of people that were there.
This may seem like an obvious question, but what would the red glow stick mean?
The red glow stick would indicate a hazard.
In the
Do not
green?
go near that.
In the green?
Green, non-hazard, benign.
Okay. So what's the next thing that you did?
At that point in time, I proceeded to the first device in question.
And where was that?
That was approximately 5 meters south of that burned vehicle, next to a buried fire hydrant.
And buried by what?
Snow.
Okay. And could you describe what you saw?
Absolutely. I approached this device in question. It appeared to me to be two 2-liter soda bottles taped together with silver purple tape. And there was a metallic object also attached to it with multiple wires leading from that metallic object, and then a PMR, personal mobile radio, Motorola, that was attached as well on the exterior of these 2 bottles.
If you'd like to use this, please feel free to.
I'd like to show you something that's been marked as an exhibit, exhibit number 2. You recognize what this is? Take it.
Yes, sir.
Could you take that out of the bag so the jurors can see it?
Absolutely, sir.
Is that the item you were talking about?
Yes, sir.
And if you could describe for us, what is it that you did or what significance did that have for you? You already mentioned, I'm sorry, but you mentioned 2 soda bottles, so if you could just start with that and just go on.
All right, so at that point in time, sir, I approached the item in question. Again, this was to market and to get situational awareness. I did not have my second bomb technician with me at the time. So I wanted to make sure that we were somewhat in a safe manner to bypass it, market and bypass it. I didn't want this to spontaneously detonate or explode, putting other people at jeopardy. So I approached the item. I noticed that the PMR, the Motorola radio, was in the on position. There was a numerical indicator on the front. I looked at the item in question, and also I had knowledge that there was a subject potentially taken into custody. So at that point in time, doing my threat assessment, I realized I'm going to mark this as a hazard. Hopefully, the individual that was on the other end of this radio was not able to function the item and cause it to go off. Marked it as a hazard.
And is that what that red glow stick right there is?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
So, again, after I inspected it to make sure that it wasn't going to spontaneously detonate, I moved on to the next one.
Okay. And what did you, when you observed that, you started to say what you saw inside the soda bottles. What did you observe?
So, approximately halfway up on the soda bottle, I observed multicolored items, appeared to be solid items or solid objects consistent with candy inside of there. There was no liquid. There was not one particular matter. It was multiple items colored that were consistent with candy.
And when you first observed that without being able to take a closer look, did you have concern for whether it was or wasn't? I'm sorry, whether it was an explosive device?
Are you objecting on some foundational basis?
Yeah.
All right. Objections withdrawn.
So based upon my knowledge, training, and experience, I looked at this as still a potential threat, but I had not diagnosed it fully, but I had to move on to the others.
item depicted in A and B?
It is, sir.
Now, those are inaccurate depictions of A and B.
Yes, sir.
In C, what would C be?
C would be the Motorola personal mobile radio.
Is that how that looked on that night?
After I detached it, sir. Yes.
Showing in which item?
This would be B for ID.
Thank you.
If it's B for ID. If you can go back,
Yes, sir.
bring it back. So after your preliminary examination of that item, what's the next thing that you did?
After I marked that item, I then proceeded with the police chief to the second item in question.
And where was that located?
That was approximately 50 meters south of the residence in question,
And the residence in question would be what?
11 Roundhouse Road.
Okay. So this would have been from where, let me just ask you this, if you could look at it. This would be Exhibit 1, Your Honor. Do you recognize this as an aerial view of that area roundhouse?
Blocking some doors, Mr.
Sorry.
So this would be the main road, the main access road. 11 Roundhouse Road would be in this particular area, and there were mailboxes here. That's where the second item in question that I had to deal with was. The first item was approximately in that area.
And could you describe what you saw?
Yes, sir. So I was led to the second item, again, approximately 50 meters south of 11 Roundhouse Road. There were some standalone mailboxes. The second item in question was a sharp boombox, a radio boombox with large speakers, and attached to the back of that boombox were two cylinders. One was, based upon my knowledge, training, and experience, was a flashbang utilized by law enforcement, military, and the other one appeared to be a smoke grenade. Both facing inward with their pins, their pull pins exposed, and some monofilament fish wire attached to those pull pins at a T, and then leading out to an anchor point.
If you could take, well, first you recognize what this
Yes, sir.
is. What is it?
That is a boombox radio sharp.
Is that the one you saw?
Yes, sir.
I'd offer that.
No, okay.
If you could take it out of the bag.
Next number exhibit, please.
I'll probably be ripping the bag, sir.
Do we want to keep it in the bags for the exhibit number, or do you want to leave it right on there? If you could just take it out of that so we can see it. No. Has something been done to that since the time you saw it? Originally?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that would be, that's what that dusting on that is?
Yes, sir.
That wasn't there when you saw it, right?
No, sir.
Okay. And what's in that bag?
Mind if I open this?
Please do. Just look at it, don't take a look at it, tell us what it is. Yeah. Did you recognize what that is?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
So I had the flashbang as well as the smoke grenade that I observed on the radio that evening.
I got it.
No, okay.
Have these been rendered harmless?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Let him put a number on
You have another back? We'll just make, we'll just give them one.
Okay.
Now, first with this, now if you can take that out and tell us what's in that. Where was it when you saw it?
So, if I may describe what we have the anchor element here, the monofilament or fish line, fish wire there, the two items, the smoke grenade, and what I perceive to be or believe to be a flashbang grenade. These were attached to the backside with some adhesive material. The two grenades canisters, they were facing inward with their pull string, pull ring facing inward with that filament line attached to the pull rings and then meeting at a T and then coming out to the back to this anchor point, which was deep down in the snow.
Did you put those items back in the bag?
Yes, sir.
If you'd be kind enough to put out that, and just tell me if you recognize what's in there. Do you recognize what's in there?
Yes, I'm familiar with what's inside there.
And what is it?
These are batteries for the shop radio.
In the radio or where?
That I don't know, sir. I did not extract the batteries from the radio.
Oh, all right. I just asked if you marked ID.
Item for identification.
See for identification.
What's the next thing that happened?
So after I marked this item and determined that it was not going to be an immediate hazard to myself or anyone else around me, I moved on to the third item.
Okay, so we put that back in.
By the way, when you saw that item, was there anything else on it? Was there an iPod or anything like that that you saw?
I don't recall this time, sir.
And where did you go next? You said to another item. What was the other item and where was it?
Yes, sir. So the third item in question that was brought to my attention by the police chief was directly across the street from where I was, approximately 50 meters, to a vehicle. And underneath this vehicle was a small item that was emanating an audible alarm, like a chirping sound, and I marked that as well.
If you'd be kind enough to look at this,
Or just to recognize what's depicted on this board.
Yes, sir. So, photo A is that standalone mailbox with that sharp boom box directly in front of it, in the position that I observed it. We also have the canisters secreted on the back end, photo D, and the anchor is marked in photo E and F. My glow stick is visible in photo A.
Can you put that close?
I did, sir.
What about G and H?
G and H, so G would be the flashbang canister, and H, perhaps another view, but I'm not certain.
Right after this.
Offer.
Okay.
Next number is
And what's the next thing? I'm sorry, you mentioned you went to a parking lot, and what happened next?
I was instructed that there was another item or another device in question underneath the vehicle, 50 meters away. I inspected that one. I realized that based upon the size, the complexity of that, more than likely that was not going to be an immediate threat, but it did have to get dealt with. So I marked out the glow stick as well. So that was the third item that I marked in the span of a matter of 10 to 15 minutes.
Excuse me, this board, do you recognize anything that's not for this board?
Yes, sir. So the chirping sound was coming from underneath this vehicle where I marked in photo B with my glow stick. This is the item after the fact, after we have dealt with it, photo E.